My name is Srinath Ramachandra. I'm the Customer Science Insights Manager leading the markets of India, China, and Japan. I'm really excited to be presenting this newly launched research called The Art and Science of Brand. This is something that's been put together by the LinkedIn Customer Science team under the umbrella of LinkedIn Creative Labs. The end objective of the research is to help make brand advertisers on LinkedIn as effective as possible by decoding what really drives brand impact on our platform. But before we get into the details of the research, why is brand awareness and brand reputation important? When Forrester surveyed B2B technology companies on the primary reasons why they select a vendor, I think two drivers bubbled up. One was price, and the other was brand reputation. Price has always been relevant, will always be relevant, so no questions there. But it's interesting to find that brand reputation is as equally important as price. In fact, I feel that brand reputation and price have a little more of an entangled relationship. Products with strong brand reputation can command a price premium, and thereby they can defend higher price points. So what does that mean for the business? It translates to better margins, better profitability, and it gives you a brand moat against your competition. All of this leads to your brand being in the purchase consideration, more often than your competition, and this leads to future cash flows and revenue. So really, brand reputation has a very tangible impact on the financials of the company. But let's talk a little bit about brand reputation. I think, but it can be a pretty complex concept, right? It includes a whole bunch of things. Brand reputation is built over a very long duration of time. It's impacted by multiple factors, such as your product quality, your distribution channels, your branding budgets, your service and sales team's competencies, the choice of market and target audience, political, cultural, social, legal issues, customer reviews, user experience, competition differentiation, historical brand events, and so on. So I can go on, right? But for the purpose of this research, we will focus on aspects of a brand which is within the circle of control of a marketer. So for this purpose, what we did was we looked at a combination of 680 brand lift studies, right? So we looked at 680 brand lift studies that were running on our platform over a period of 1 year's time. So these are essentially advertisers on our platform who ran brand lift studies to test, whether they were successful in terms of driving brand awareness results. So we looked at a sample size of 680 over a period of 1 year, and this cuts across all brands. This cuts across verticals, it cuts across industries, it cuts across company sizes, geographies. So it's the whole mix on our platform. These brand lift studies, we mapped it to about 40 plus variables around creative, around campaign metrics, and around company metrics. And we ran it through a machine learning model called the Random Forest Classification Model. And our objective was to figure out what really drives, brand lift. What really compels a member to say, hey, I'm aware of this brand, I'm familiar with this brand, versus not saying so. And with that, this was the key results that we saw. The Random Forest model bubbled up 9 significant variables that drove impact on paid awareness ads. These 9 variables cut across 3 key pillars of creative ad. There's the first pillar, which is the creative attributes, the second pillar, which is the media delivery levers, and the third pillar, which is the brand network effect. Across these 3 key pillars, the 9 factors drove 85% contribution to explaining what drove brand awareness lift on LinkedIn. Let's look at the first and the most important pillar, the creative attributes of branding activity. Aspects of creative are very important to capture audience attention. And this includes aspects such as the format, the duration of the creative, and the messaging that goes in. That was the first 30%. If you look at the second most important set of attributes, that's the media delivery levers. This is based on how you're running your campaigns. What are the metrics you're optimizing for? For this, we believe reach is the foundational media metric, along with recency and frequency. So that was a pillar, second pillar with 30% contribution. The third most important pillar, with about 25% contribution, was the strength of your existing brand effect network, right? So these are all your organic engagement activities, follower network, and employee networks. And all of this has a huge knock-on in terms of your subsequent paid advertising. There are a bunch of other factors which total up to 15, but for the purpose of this keynote, we'll stick to the first three. Okay, so let's dive into the first one. The most important pillar, probably, the creative drivers of attention. Audience attention is the leading predictor for brand or product awareness. There are three creative factors that are important to capturing and retaining audience attention. The first one being the quality of the creative, which we measure by a metric called as dwell time. Right? We'll get into a little bit more of that in the next slide, but marketers need to focus on dwell time, is the amount of attention the audience is paying to a creative, rather than talking about clicks or website visits. And so what it means is investing into the creative is very important. Attention-driving formats such as video or carousel ads drive higher dwell time. We'll also share a little bit about what format and what specific lengths of videos work, so there's a little bit more to dig in there. What we also found is exposing audiences to multiple creatives or copies consistently was also found to drive high brand awareness lift. Okay, so let's look at the first factor, the quality of creative. I think that's very critical to capturing and maintaining audience attention. Ads that catch attention lead to higher dwell time. So what does this mean? When you're scrolling through your feed, if you find something interesting, you'll pause, you look at the ad or the content. That is the metric that we tracked, and so dwell time is that metric. When the members spent a lot of time on the creative or the content, we found that that was an early predictor to driving brand awareness. There's a bunch of formats that help you to increase dwell time. These are, our LinkedIn ad products such as video and carousel ads. What we found was ads that drove a dwell time of 9 to 11 seconds on the creative saw a 1.2x better uplift on the objective than those creatives that drove just 1 second dwell time. So the key takeaway there is just develop creatives that engage audience using a storytelling approach and focus on creating interest and attention rather than clicks and website visits. Let's look at a couple of ad examples. We've got HP here and Siemens here, and these were the top performing B2B ads that bubbled up in terms of high dwell time on creative, and they do this through captivating stories and showcasing customer pain points.
Unprotected machines like this one are ripe for random phishing attacks. If Mom's company had given her the HP Elite Dragonfly with Wolf Security, my attack would be dead on arrival.
And there was a woman called Katie. One morning, she realized that the giant sky towers she managed weren't running on an open AI-enabled software. And precious energy was being depleted by evil power surges.
The story was even better than last night's advanced manufacturing story.
Keep software system worries away from bedtime. Improve your building's efficiency with Siemens Accelerator.
I think well-told stories there that can build intrigue and anticipation, even within a short duration, were very successful. I think what's also true is featuring familiar characters and scenarios increases the chance that the audience will watch your ad to the end, and that's really critical to driving lift. From the top performing ad examples, it was clear that video ads were bubbling up as the most engaging format that drive higher dwell time and ad recall. So we dug into a little bit, and we found some insights there. We found that video ads drive 11% higher average dwell time compared to static image-based ads. Advertisers who set their creative objectives as video view versus those who set clicks or website actions saw 27% more dwell time on their creative. And similarly, in a similar vein, I think advertisers who set an optimization target for video views rather than cost per click saw 33% higher dwell time on the creatives. So really, the message here is if you're in driving brand awareness, just focus on video objectives there and set your optimization and campaigns in a way that works for these outcomes. Okay, so now that we know that video ads are the best suited format to capture audience attention, we wanted to understand what length of videos works. And from the study, we found that video lengths between 7 to 15 and 15 to 13 seconds saw about 1.3x higher brand awareness lift versus those videos which are less than 6 seconds, which is surprising. We saw a lot of videos which are really short, right? 6 seconds GIFs. So think about using these short videos of 7 to 30 seconds, and that helps you to tell your brand story and capture attention. Let's look at a couple of top-performing video examples from Orange Business and Salesforce. Orange Business, in this example, uses design elements such as brand sounds and what we call as supers, which is a mix of graphics, titles, and text. It helps you to support the video visuals and communicate key messages in a very punchy way. Salesforce uses distinctive brand codes such as logos, colors, and mascots. This helps to drive mental availability and faster recall, especially as you keep using those characters on. And so that builds that connection with the audience. Let's look at this example.
It's Henry, and this is Salesforce Customer 360. It tells Henry's hotel to heat his room hotter than a hot chili, which weirdly is exactly how he likes it. Wow your customers in a whole new way with Salesforce Customer 360.
Okay, so that was on the video length, so hopefully that was interesting. Let's look at the number of creatives. I think what we found is that exposing audience to multiple creatives seems to be a strategy that helps to drive better lift. So for example, when a member was exposed to 5 to 7 creatives, and again, this is over an extended period of time of about 60 days, we showed that it is a 1.25x better uplift compared to members who just saw one creative, right? So it's very clear that exposure to multiple creatives is important to drive awareness. I think this is useful as well for a marketer because it helps to show brand in multiple buying situations, right? Because there are obviously multiple use cases for your brand. And then it gives an opportunity to do an A/B testing by doing a lot of localization. I think we heard about the Hindi part, so I think localization and testing those out through multiple creatives would be the way to go. Here's a good example of multiple creative content from a brand called Just Eats for Business. Each creative calls out a known audience use case and uses a variety of creatively consistent ads. These highlight all the category entry points of buying situations for the brand. And this helps to drive the best results. So really, what we have is what we had was the first section was the creative elements, and hopefully we covered that in breadth. And hopefully that helps us to tell a more engaging brand story. But let's dive into the second important pillar, the media delivery levers. In this section, we'll explore what delivery metrics are really key and what should you optimize your campaigns for to drive the best results from a brand awareness perspective. I think there's a saying which says that if a tree falls in the forest and no one around is there to hear it, did it really make a sound? I think it's very apt here because if you don't reach your audience, you don't really matter. Right? So reach is really the foundational and the key metric here. We have to ensure that the campaign is aimed at reaching as many of the relevant audience as possible to help drive better brand awareness results. However, it's not just about reach. Building consistency and being top of mind are equally critical factors to driving brand awareness lift. Our study shows that 2 variables, recency and frequency, are also the 2 key variables that support and drive brand awareness lift. In B2B, there's a thumb rule which says 95% of the target audience is always out of market, which means that you're not buying products that only comes at certain points of time. But however, branding's role is actually quite different from performance marketing. While performance marketing needs to really laser down and sort of really focus on the 5% audience who are in market, I think branding really needs to focus on the 95% who are out of market, so that when they come into market and they're ready to buy, your brand is top of mind. So while audience reach is a function of targeting, the recommendation is not to go too narrow, not to go too intent-based, and not to go too laser-focused on your reach. Maximize your category reach. This will ensure that you reach your future buyers and you're building your pipeline when they're ready to buy your product. While category reach is important, we also know the importance of brand being top of mind. Let's look at recency as one of the factors. In the study, the way we defined recency was the time gap between when a particular member took the brand lift study, right, the survey, and the last time they received the impression from the campaign. So the greater the gap, that means they saw the campaign or the impression a longer time ago. What was interesting from the study is that those members who received an ad impression a day before, just one day before, showed 1.3x higher lift compared to those who received an impression 10 days before. So the more recent the ad is, the more you are top of mind and more you're likely to recall and be aware of the brand. So our recommendation there, if you sort of do a little bit of math, is that you need to target and deliver at least one impression per week per target member. So that can be the sort of the thumb rule in terms of driving recency. What about frequency then? We looked at frequency on a 90-day time window. Audience that received 16 to 20 impressions over 90 days, that's about 3 months, they reported a 1.4x higher lift than those that received only 1 or 2 impressions. Again, this translates to an optimal frequency of at least 1 impression per week per target audience, right? So that seems to be the magical number that was emerging from both of these aspects of recency and frequency. So that's great. I think we looked at creative. We looked at the brand, looked at what are the levers you can influence from your media planning. Let's look at something which is slightly different now. I think that this is the third key pillar. This is the existing brand network effects. So what do I mean by that? I think it's if you think about it, branding works on a compounding principle, right? So what this means is bigger brands have an inherent advantage because they can capitalize on their existing brand strength and the network that already have, right? It's much like financial investing. Marketing brands need to invest consistently over a long period of time to build equity, but then over a period of time, it compounds and suddenly you start seeing disproportionate impact. That really is a parallel to how we need to think about branding. So inherently, some of these bigger brands have a huge, advantage compared to the smaller brands. So with this in mind, what are the 3 key brand network effects that we saw? We saw that organic engagement that a company was doing on LinkedIn through the LinkedIn company page correlated to higher, better brand results when they were running the paid campaigns. Also from the study, we saw brands that had a critical mass of follower base on their LinkedIn company page saw much higher brand lift. And then we saw that when members who had connections to a particular brand, when they saw the advertising, that group reported a much higher brand lift compared to somebody who didn't know anybody from that company. We'll dig a little bit into all of these 3. Sorry, if we go back, yeah. So engaging with audiences organically via the LinkedIn company page helps drive a better response to your sponsored activity for all your product lines, right? Like it's not just for that particular product, but across the product line it drives impact. What we found is that companies that drove 50 to 60,000 organic engagements over a period of 6 months on their LinkedIn company page saw 1.7x better uplift on their paid brand awareness activity compared to companies that were doing at a much lower level, that is less than 10,000 members, right? And the good thing about this is not paid media, right? You don't need to spend a lot. And this can be done organically. From the study, we also saw that certain brands above a critical mass of followers saw much better outcomes from paid activity. Companies that had 500,000 plus follower base on LinkedIn saw a 2.8x higher positive response on their paid brand activity compared to companies that had less than 10,000 followers. Less than 100,000 followers, sorry. Followers on LinkedIn can be acquired through a variety of ways. There are follower ads, organic activity. You can even tag, your other sponsored campaigns with the button where the audience can opt to follow you on your company page. So all of this can help you to build your follower base. We also explored the data to understand the difference in terms of the impact of sponsored ads on members who are connected to the company's employees. Call it the employee network effect, right? Brands who target audience who are connected to 2+ employees showed a massive 2.2x higher positive response on paid branding activity compared to audiences that are not connected to company employee base. I think it's clear that we need to leverage the power of the employee network, and companies need to encourage individuals, especially those who are in their customer-facing roles, to connect with their relevant target audience and their members. Brands can further tap into this incredible power of the employee network to help amplify the voice of SME and senior executives who tend to have larger networks. Here is an example of how Cogism amplified the voice of the CMO through paid ads. There are a couple of interesting nuggets that we dig out. I think when we looked at SMEs and execs, people tend to believe people post more than company post. And so, you can use your SMEs and execs to provide that trusted, authentic voice for brands. Also, amplifying employee advocates through thought leader ads. We've seen initially from early results that there was 1.6x higher engagement compared to single image ads. So all of this points towards how brands can leverage their existing brand networks to drive lift. Okay, so that was a lot of numbers and a lot of messages. But hopefully, if I were to leave you with, if you were to forget everything that I shared, I would love to leave you with these 5 key messages, which are the takeaways from the research. The first one is attention is critical. Attention, which is measured by dwell time on ads, is the most important predictor to driving brand awareness lift. Use diverse content, use rich storytelling formats, and engage audience and sustain their attention to drive lift. The second one, short video ads are highly effective. Video ads which evoke emotion, use sounds, use design elements, and are effective at telling brand stories and are very important to drive meaningful brand engagements. The third one, build category reach and ensure recency. Broaden reach with all the relevant audience and be as recent as possible. And we saw that magic number of 1 impression per member per week. So aim for that, and I think it'll help you to drive better brand lift. The fourth one, maximize brand network effects. Develop an organic content strategy, attract followers, and amplify employee and SME voices. And finally, the fifth, create a culture of experimentation. Run tests to learn what drives more effective performance and outcomes for your brand. I thank you all for your time, but most importantly, I thank you for your attention.